All right, so I'm be answering all you guys' questions. If you're popping in, let me know where you're from. My ex and I are 50 years old, dating for 2.5 years, living in two separate countries. We were both looking to be married since day one. Okay, Casey, is there any type of game plan on how you guys are going to get under the same roof or even in the same country or same city, even or town? What's the game plan there? This is kind of like a 90-day fiance type deal because they struggle with visas and trying to get them approved and all the hoops you have to jump in order to date and marry someone from across seas. Yes, Easy started therapy with me about 6 months ago. Okay, that's a good sign. And we had about 5 to 6 sessions. The last one was major with a real plan put in place. Unfortunately, I pushed the convo forward after the session. We live in two neighboring counties, not countries. Okay. 2 hours apart. That makes more sense by car. You push the conversation further. So this is one thing that I do when I work with couples. I say, you're here with me for an hour. You have the rest of the week to be around each other. Don't let something that you say within this hour session deteriorate everything outside of this session. If you're with me for 1 hour and you have to be with your spouse, your significant other for the other 167 hours, you might not want to say something that's going to make the rest of those hours not comfortable. If you feel like you've made progress, and that's the whole point of having those sessions in therapy, that's the point of having coaching sessions, is you want to learn skills that you can take into the other 167 hours when you're not sleeping, how you can be with that person. If you just don't have the safe space to have those conversations outside of the coaching or therapy, then you might not want to do it. It blew up and we both took space for a few days. He's a textbook FA, fearful avoidant, followed up with a breakup text. I was devastated, said he was not ready for marriage and was not willing to move to my city. When you guys first started dating, I'm sure you saw some things that were red flaggish and some things that were not necessarily congruent with what he was saying really early in a relationship. At what point did you realize that he may not have been all in because there's a reason you guys went to therapy? Something tells me that there was something that was you couldn't work out on your own, that you had to go to therapy. I'm a big analytics nerd and I always find this stat interesting. Over the past 28 days, only 12% of the viewers are subscribed, which means 87% of you guys aren't even subscribed to the channel. I want you guys to do me a big favor. If you find this content interesting and if you want to help the channel grow in the future, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want my help personally, you can reach out to me on my website at www.fruitfulseeds with the Z at the end.com. Who decided to go to therapy? Whose decision was it? There was a therapist that told me many years ago, she said, whenever a woman brings a man into therapy, the relationship is still salvageable. But when a man brings a woman into therapy, it's pretty much over. It's like a Hail Mary. They're panicking and they're like almost in fight or flight mode because usually once women check out, they're done. They're checked out. I mean, the fallback in love isn't happening. And I'm sorry, men. I know 55% of you guys that are watching this are men. It's just how it is. He said this very early on. He went on to say he failed me. He is not the man he thought he was. So I would have so many follow-up questions for that. What was his relationship history? What was his upbringing like? Who were the mentors or the people who were role models as far as relationships wise that he saw? If he came from a background of people who were divorced and broken up and not really taking relationships and the sanctity of vows serious, the probability of you getting divorced, I think it goes up by at least 50%. If they were coming from backgrounds where people were divorced and people were cheating and all these different things happened, they usually repeat more of the patterns, some way, shape, or form. I mean, it doesn't even have to be physical cheating or leaving or wanting a divorce. It can also be they're not going to buy into the marriage and the relationship like they should in order to make it healthy and thriving. He is a people pleaser. Okay, that was your first red flag when you first started dating him. I brought up therapy and he was eager to learn because relationships and childhood trauma had always challenged him. I came from parents married 70 years. Now that's important. That's like probably one of the most important things people can look for these days. Not to say that all people who have parents that are still married are healthy marriages because there's a lot of dysfunctional marriages that go on till death do us part, but And you have to look at the generational differences too. And this is what I liked when I was studying sociology. There's circumstances, and then there's different norms during different eras, and certain things that people tolerated back then, 60 years ago, that they would never tolerate today. I mean, you have to think of like the shift in the dynamics of the core nucleus of the home now. They're not the same. I mean, people 60 years ago, think about it, women weren't working as much as they were working today. So they really lean heavy on the husband in the household to make things work financially. And it's just not the same anymore. It's not like that. And these days, I think people feel they have a lot more options, which means what? If you feel you have a lot of options of anything, you won't stick in your car, you won't stick with your house, you won't stick with a spouse because you feel like you have that many more options. I think one of the biggest reasons is because people can't sit in gratitude with what they already have. There's a lack of content that I see happening a lot in relationships and in just people's life in general. And I think a lot of it has to do with just being able to sit in gratitude with what you have. Take time. Okay, here's another thing people used to do. We used to have these things called photo albums, right? Remember that? Remember back when we had to take Polaroid pictures and you had to go to the local whatever store to get your photos printed off? How many of us take pictures on our cell phone and we never look at those pictures again? Because I feel like that's a really good gratitude exercise. I think that's the reason why Apple and Facebook and Snapchat, they all kind of like getting on. They start to send us these memories, from a year ago, all these different things. Those are gratitude exercises, right? When we have photo albums and people would come over for dinner, or we host at our house, we'll have that photo album. Back in the day, no, I'm kind of outdating myself because I don't think I've ever done that. The generations before me, they would have these photo albums sitting out front and center. People would go through them. They talk about them. They'll talk about these different type of memories, and that releases oxytocin. That releases gratitude moments for the people who are involved, right? We don't have that anymore. People, what do? They'll post it on Facebook. They'll post it on Instagram. We're done. And you get those little initial dopamine from the likes and everything, but that's it. And then you don't see those pictures anymore. So whenever I'm working with clients, I say, I want you guys to sit and think about when you guys first met. Think about your first date. Think about what he was wearing, what she was wearing. Think about, my wife's a lot better at this than I am. I'm terrible with memory like that. But I think those are really good moments. She actually printed out a calendar for me, and I have it here with all the different memories from, each month has a different memory. And I think this is great. Like, she's doing this without me even asking. This is just something that she feels that she does herself. She sits in gratitude, and like I'll just catch her one day just like thinking, and she's like, I'm just thinking about when we did this. But that keeps the stickiness in that relationship, I feel. Not to say that our relationship's perfect, because it's not. No one is. He had no relationship models. Mom was an addict for part of his childhood. That's an ace. If you look at adverse childhood experiences, that's an A score. He was excited that therapy would give him tools. Once again, when I first learned about this attachment style thing, I thought like, oh, this is cool, but what does it mean? Like, how does this apply to my life? So you can have all the tools in the world, or you have to be ready for it. You can get excited about something, but it doesn't necessarily mean it'll give you the drive that you need to continue it. Because this one thing I like that the Bible says, when you get out of a tough situation, you have to keep that thorn in your side, right? You have to keep that thorn in your side to remember that pain. It's confusing, especially when he was on board and he was talking like he was ready for the next level, and then he wasn't. His text was super long, and I never knew he did not want to move into my city. He never told me, even though I asked. People pleasing as usually. I responded to the text only saying, "This is hard to read. Thanks for your transparency. I accept your decision." I didn't ask a single question. Not sure if that was a good response. Now I want to talk. But he clearly said in his text that he is walking away from me in this relationship, and you deserve to be with a man who believes and wants to give you the commitment you want without thinking. As much as we know his story, as much as we want to be there for him, you can't be there for someone who doesn't want the help. I mean, we can't heal him for him. No amount of love can help heal him. I've been in therapy before. Here's one thing that they told me, the therapist, which I take this away. It's been 10 years. I took this away from her. I'll never forget it. She said, never introduce divorce or abandonment to the relationship, ever. No matter how upset you get, no matter how much you disagree, only use those words if you're willing to act on those decisions. So I want a divorce. I don't think this is the right relationship for me. The instant that you introduce that to the relationship, that abandonment, that's when things start to get a little bit rocky. That's when it loses this, like I talked about before, the stickiness, because you're introducing a concept that's going to scare the other person. And what usually happens is the other person starts either walking on eggshells or you break the trust between that relationship. I don't know if you guys believe in that or not, but that was one of the biggest takeaways I've ever gotten from therapy, which is don't introduce that to the relationship.